A big welcome to this week's Power of Sport. In this third episode, we're bringing you the latest stories from across the Sport for Good world, more stories about community and how sport is being used as a real vehicle for change. And stay with us, because coming up after the news, I'm joined by Joe Lockley, someone who's helped bring different sectors together by using boxing, not just as a sport, but as a tool for transformation. Joe is the founding director of Brightstar, an organization with a simple but powerful mission to empower a brighter future. Since 2016, Brightstar's journey has been incredible, growing from a volunteer-run project supporting just 6 young people to a movement with several centres across the West Midlands, 23 full-time staff, 30 volunteers, and more than 600 young people supported every single week. They've been recognised with the Queen's Award for the impact they're having in their communities. Their work is a brilliant example of what happens when you lead with your why and use sport to knock down barriers and build lasting, sustainable change, not just locally, but with international partners too. So as we go through this week's news, listen out for those same themes: collaboration, purpose, impact, because they lead us straight into that conversation with Joe. Let's get into this week's Power of Sport news. To kick us off this week, Oldham Athletic Community Trust has launched a bold new 3-year strategy called A Better Oldham, setting out how it will tackle inequality, improve health and well-being, create real opportunities across the borough from 2026 to 2029. The plan puts sport, education and health at the centre of a place-based approach, targeting big local challenges like low life expectancy, inactivity, obesity and long-standing inequality. Working with trusted partners across Oldham's 5 districts, Trust wants to make sure support reaches the communities that need it most. Meanwhile, one of the standout Sport for Good stories this week comes from the 6th tier of English football. Chester FC Community Trust has published its first social value impact report, and the results are eye-catching. The independently assessed report shows the Trust is generating £10.20 social value for every £1 invested, delivering £8.7 million of social value into communities across Chester and Cheshire West. As the club's charitable arm, the Trust runs programmes across health, education, social inclusion and sport, supporting thousands of people, from young people and older adults to people with disabilities and those facing isolation. The report highlights major impact in education and skills, health and well-being, and social inclusion. For a club outside the Football League, it's a powerful reminder that even at the 6th tier, football can deliver serious, measurable social impact. Still in the Northwest, a new Sport for Good programme backed by Sellafields Limited is using sport to help change young lives in Warrington. The initiative, called Train Like a Pro, was launched on the 17th of February and is being delivered through Warrington Youth Zone. The 12-week programme combines football, boxing, rugby and gym sessions with mentoring and life skills workshops, focusing on mental health, confidence and positive life choices. So far, 44 young people have taken part, with the aim of using structured sport not just to improve fitness, but to build resilience, direction and long-term opportunities. It's another example of how sport is being used as a practical tool for early intervention, prevention, and community impact. At Sportsbank, we're building a movement to remove financial barriers that stop young people from playing sport. And we can't do it without brilliant people alongside us. We're looking for volunteers. Whether you're into community outreach, partnership, admin, research, storytelling, or just rolling your sleeves up and making things happen, there's a role for you in this next chapter. Our volunteer strategy is about using skills, experience, and real passion to create practical change, connecting generosity to need and dignity to opportunity. If you believe every young person should have the chance to play, belong, and thrive through sport, we'd love you to be part of the team. Join us and help build a fairer sporting future. Message me on xavier@sportlocalaction.org. Away from the UK, in Chile, a unique sports project is turning heads. At the Valparaiso Penitentiary Complex, inmates have formed the country's first officially registered rugby club created inside a prison. The team, called Rugby Union Libertad, trains 3 days a week on the field, 2 in the gym, and plays regular matches, all with a clear purpose, using sport to support rehabilitation and social reintegration after release. What began as a small workshop in 2016 has grown into a nationally recognised programme, now supported by the Freedom Foundation, which provides former inmates with training, therapy and help into work. In 2024, the team even played Chile's national side, Los Condores, bringing national attention to the project. Still abroad, Olympic values meet community impact in Milan. During the 2026 Winter Games, the Catholic Archdiocese of Milan launched a new initiative to teach Olympic values, friendship, respect, excellence to thousands of children. Partnering with local sports clubs and youth centres, the programme combines workshops, athlete visits and creative projects to use sport as a tool for cooperation and inclusion beyond elite competition. And now a bit of housekeeping. You can watch or listen to the pod on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon and Apple. Just search Power of Sport Podcast. Also, if you have news that you'd like to share from across the Sport for Good sector, do drop us a line on news, sport local, action, org, news, sport, action, org, all your Sport for Good news. And that's this week's Sport for Good News, stories of investment, impact and opportunity, all showing how sport can be a real force for change in communities. And that's exactly what today's guest lives and breathes. Joining me now is Joe Lockley, founding director of Brightstar, who's bringing different sectors together by using boxing as a vehicle for transformation. Joe, welcome to Power of Sport. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, good stuff. Joe, tell us a little bit for the listeners and viewers. Tell us a little bit about Brightstar Boxing. What do you do?
Yeah, Brightstar is an organisation that uses sport as a vehicle for change. In particular, boxing. We help young people who might have been through trauma or adverse childhood experiences. We mainly use boxing as a way to help people believe in themselves, help create a sense of belonging, and help people pursue their passion, and help people pursue purpose, to be able to be the greatest version of themselves that they can be.
And how long have you been doing this?
We started Brightstar in 2016, so it's been kind of the last 9 or 10 years now.
Okay, good stuff. And kind of before that, what took you to a place where you wanted to get that going? What was your previous experience? What was kind of life stuff that you'd had? What made you decide that this was the thing that you wanted to do?
Well, my background was always sport. Sport was a massive part of my life, and sport really shaped the person I am today. Sport gave me the belief in myself. Sport gave me that real sense of purpose and belonging. And sport's always been a real big part of my life. And I needed other people to feel that the same benefits of that. And it all really happened by mistake, really. But we just knew exactly what it could achieve. And that's how it all started, really. Sport was my background, but I never really saw myself in a career where I could be coaching it or using it in the way that I was. But yeah, I'm glad it all worked out how it did.
And what I mean, you won't know this because you're sitting down. I mean, I'm reasonably tall, but Joe, you towered over me at an event we were at recently. What sports were you into?
Yeah, I'm 6'8", and you can't really tell that when I'm sitting down. So we're looking at we're on the same height here. But yeah, my sport was boxing and also football. I really kind of like that. I really liked the part of being in team sports. When I was boxing, I thought that's an individual sport. That isn't something that would normally appeal to me. But it did feel like when you're training, you're part of a much bigger team against the world there. And yeah, it was, for me, it wasn't all about competition. It was about how sport could really make you feel. That was a really key part to me. But I try everything.
Cool. And tell us about that moment when you thought, right, okay, you're going to turn playing football, boxing, and then starting to coach boxing. But tell us about that moment when you thought, right, okay, this boxing is going to have a greater meaning here, and you're going to start using it to help people. When did that happen?
Yeah, well, that was a life-changing moment for me, and that was kind of what created everything. That was the birth of Brightstar too, and I was in the gym, in the local gym. My friend, we were punching the punch bag, and it was like the weights gym there. And a parent came up to me and said, and to me, my friend, and she said, "Can you help my son?" And I didn't know where that came from or what had happened there. And when I spoke to her, it seemed like that she was just after anything to support her son. Her son was 14, and he was she was thinking he was getting involved in the wrong peer group. He was really struggling to regulate his emotions. He had about 5 different social workers in the last 18 months, and he was kind of on a waiting list for CAMS, at risk of being excluded, and he had nowhere else to turn. And I just kind of said, I thought you needed like a qualification or a degree or like a kind of doctorate in therapy to be able to help people. And what I quickly found is that sport can be that help that's needed. So I said to her, I don't know if I can help, but me and my friend, we can hold the pads for him. We can teach him a little bit of boxing if that works. And she said, yeah, I'd love to. He needs some sort of male role model. He needs some sort of purpose. If you can do some boxing with him, amazing. And I said, okay, but it won't be great on his own. If he can bring the friends that you're worried about, let's bring them all here and let's actually see what they can do. So I spoke to the guy who ran the gym, and I said, look, you're not using the gym on a Tuesday at 6 till 8. Can we use that time there? He was like, yeah, definitely. Let's get something on the go. So me and my friend Stu, we literally had these 6 lads turn up, and we're teaching their stance, their movement. And we soon found out that 2 hours was so long for them to try and box for with their fitness levels, what they were. So it was kind of like 15 minutes of boxing, then we'd have a chat, and we'd ask the open questions, find out more about them. 15 minutes of boxing, and it would kind of run like that. And within, I'm going to say 6 weeks, 2 months, we had our first phone call, which was from a school saying, can we refer more people? This person has changed their life. We really, really want to be able to get more people benefit. And I was like, no, we don't do that. We're just working with these 6. And then it was a social worker said the same thing. And it wasn't until we had the kind of 10, 15 calls, and there was one real emotional call. It was one young person who was in care with their nan. And the nan phoned me and said, look, I feel like my family can be back together again now. And she got really emotional. She's like, thank you for everything you're doing. I was like, I'm not doing anything. This is him that's changing his life. He's doing amazing. So I sat down with him the next day, and I said to these 6 people, I was like, what's happening here, guys? I'm hearing that you're making huge changes outside of boxing. I'm hearing at home, at school, in the community. What are the things that are happening here? And when they answered that was a big turning point for me, because it wasn't about them becoming better at boxing. The words they were using was about them feeling like they had a family, them feeling that belonging or connection was what they called it, them feeling like they had purpose. One of them felt like they were doing great at something, and they didn't feel like they could do great in much. We had the belief and the significance there. And they all had these emotional outlets as well, which was helping them be so calm outside in the community. And they were getting a real strong understanding of who they were. When I think of them needs, the belonging, purpose, control, significance, that wasn't why we started these sessions, but it's why we carried on doing them there, because it became less about the sport and more about the values that could bring. And I said to them, we need to there's more people that want to get involved. Can we get them involved? And they said, yeah, let's start our own club. Let's get matching hoodies. Let's get matching t-shirts. And I said, cool, let's do that then. Next week, you come up with a logo and a name. And after that, we'll create something. We'll set up, we'll find out who needs to come and who needs this most. You guys be the committee. And the next week they came in, and the lad who's actually, it was all started for, he came in with his chest out, his shoulders back, and I could see he was feeling really confident. So I just said, you've got a great name, haven't you? And he goes, yeah, I want to call it Brightstar Boxing. And I said, why not like Shifnal Boxing Club, right? Brighton Boxing Club. I said, that's what most places are called. And he said, Joe, you don't get it. He said, you can only see a bright star on a dark night. And that's where we came from. And I was thinking, if you can come up with this name, you can create everything that we're doing. So that was the birth of Brightstar. We started up, at the time we didn't know it was called this, but a referral pathway. We worked with social workers, local PRUs, local schools. And we said, look, if you can refer the people who you feel need this most, the people who lack that identity, that belonging, the people who need that male role model, the people that are struggling to regulate their emotions, if you can bring them down, we'll be able to support them. And that was where, like, opened the floodgates. We created a real community for so many young people. And it started off as a boxing club, but it's evolved into a mental health support group and so much more. So yeah, that was the birth of it, and we're now supporting 600 young people a week from the 6.
That's incredible. And so that growth to 600 people, kind of how long did that take?
I would say the first massive jump, the first big growth was having our own premises, having our own facility where we could facilitate this. So in 2018, we took on a venue within 2 years. And that was where it was. We started opening our alternative education, our mental health support groups, our NEETs programs, our empowerment programs as well. And that was when it was a lot wider. So I'd say, the 600 is still growing. It's still a rising number. But that was a massive point for us where it wasn't just boxing sessions. It was all about the community support and all about how we can really empower local communities to be able to support the young people that they're with.
And do you take it? So do you take it on the road as well as having your own premises? Do you you move it around? How far do you go geographically?
Yeah, we found that the best way to support the young people, the main barrier is them walking through the doors. We found that that's the hardest thing. A lot of people, if you just had an open session, the people that will come would be those that are interested in boxing. We don't want to appeal to those that are interested in boxing. We want to appeal to those that really want to change their lives, really want to transform. So to do that, we need to go out and reach with them. So if we have a number of referrals from a local community, we'll go out to that local community and run the sessions there. So we're really practicing going in their local communities, but also we kind of work all across the country, empowering other clubs to better support their community and actually bring the sectors together.
It's brilliant. So do you, I mean, your work is clearly rooted in empathy and listening. Why do you think young people are so often misunderstood by schools, by the services, by systems? What's your understanding of how that misunderstanding happens?
Yeah, well, I think more young people need the support more than ever. There's so many more young people that are struggling with adverse childhood experiences, and there's so many young people that really have created an identity based on being liked online because of the rise of social media. So what I found is that if you're looking at the education sector, for example, there's often have a specific guidance that has to be followed, which isn't suitable for everyone. And young people can often feel more isolated and left out from that. And you could say that about every single sector that exists. There's a specific program that needs to happen. And that's where sport can allow people to be authentic and really become themselves and who they are. They don't have to follow this guidance. This is how they can become. And that's why the sports sector to be embedded with the social care sector, with the education sector, with the youth sector in whole, that's where it lives and that's where we can make change. If we separate that sport for competition with sport for change, that's where we can have that sport for change really, really playing a huge part in this.
And does it overlap? I know it does overlap because there's an element of getting good at boxing, of course, within this, right? But does someone ever come in for, because they really need some help, so they've had problems with social services or at school or whatever, and then all of a sudden you just find they're a fantastic boxer and they've gone on. Have you got any big stories so far in terms of people that have really made it?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess what we found is that the young people we work with, they're often put everything in to the sport because that's the one place where they feel the most at home, and they always feel like they need to give something back to that sport there. So yeah, we have some people that do incredible things with the boxing, but what we found is we have our competition squad that trains separately. We found if someone who was struggling with anxiety or depression came in there and they were straight into the amateur squad, that's where it's a very intense level. That's where there's a lot of sparring and things. And for a lot of young people, they might not even want to go and have a bout. We want to address what they want to do and help them achieve their goals. So there's a progression pathway where they'll go into the competition squad. It's almost seen as something separate where they can really progress into it. And if that's their goal, brilliant, we'll help them to achieve that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So, I mean, I just from reading about online and talking to you, you hear how parents describe Brightstar Boxing as a really safe, non-judgmental space, which is so needed. And obviously, the fewer and fewer of these spaces around the country. But what does it take day to day to create that safe environment?
I think the two words there are two of the values. So I think passion and curiosity of what it really, really takes. I think the one thing is always being curious about what is happening for these young people. I think quite often a behaviour will be seen and a young person will be punished for that behaviour. What we want to do is look at what is the need that behaviour is communicating. So is that them communicating that they're struggling with their identity? Is it them communicating that they don't feel a sense of belonging from anywhere? Is it them trying to fit in? And if we can start to meet the needs under the behaviours, amazing. Obviously, there's some times when it's really, really challenging, but we're on a mission to be able to change the way that the world works for young people. And we can do that if we're always curious about how each unique individual person wants to achieve. If it's about how much they want it, we can help them believe in themselves, how much we can form that sense of belonging, and how much we can help them become. And that's really, really key. And I think that comes from having a team of passionate people that are really, really curious about every young person that we work with.
Curiosity just comes up so much. I hear it again and again. You've used the saying, which is one I love, that it takes a village to raise a child. And how do you bring everyone together with, you know, the parents or carers, the family, the schools, the social services? How do you get them together as a team? Because you know you've only got certain hours in the day and certain time in the gym, etc. You need this to flourish outside of the gym as well. So how does that work?
I think quite often when people get a bit confused is when people think of a referral pathway, they think of, cool, they're going to work with you at this time, they're going to work with you at that time. And actually it's rather than looking at what we offer, it's more about how we look at that young person's journey as a whole and look at what part sport can play, what part education can play, and what part social care can play. And actually understanding going into every meeting with the young person, going into every opportunity, and actually seeing this is the time in this person's life where they're going to need the most support. And that's why I think it's more about creating, I know you say creating a village for a child, it's about creating a community of belonging. Every person in that community, regardless of their qualifications, regardless of their organisation, if they can be working on what is the best thing for this community, they can create a sense of belonging everywhere. And I think every interaction is an intervention. Every time we see this young person, it's about how can we support them? And that can be positive or negative. So it's about having that best intervention at every interaction with the young person.
Yeah, and the belonging point's really important, isn't it? You know, going back to when the guy came in and you know he wanted to call it Brightstar Boxing, and it was all having the hoodies, and it was feeling that, you know, really feeling that community, feeling part of a community that I presume lots of them hadn't felt before. And you see that as, even if they come in as a bit of a loner or with anxiety, you really see that kind of feeling part of Brightstar Boxing as something that's really important.
That's the massive thing. Then actually the feelings that the young person has is what we can help them create. And it's kind of like, so for example, on Brightstar, on our wall, we've got 450 stars, and it's all, each one of them has a value that a young person has picked, and they pick that on there, so they feel like they've got ownership for that. And it's giving that young person control and ownership for their destiny. It's not, this is a session, this is how you'll fit in. It's understanding their needs, understanding what's wanted, what do they want to get out of this. And quite often sport can be around, this is how you do it to become the best. And actually is that what they want to do? Do they want to become the best, or do they want the feeling that they're getting better while still making new friends, while still feeling part of something as well? Because that's completely different the way you'd coach it. And that's where having the coaches that really care and want to work and want the best for every young person, rather than them that thinking, I want to produce a champion, is the best way forward.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Look, Brightstar Boxing, clearly you're all about impact. You know what you're trying to achieve with each individual. Parasport is all about impact and shining a light on those stories, right? But you know, there must have been, over the time now, you've done it for quite a long time, kind of one or two real stories that jump out.
Yeah, there's, in terms of the young people that we're working with, there's some incredible stories. There's one, I think I'll give two completely different examples. One was there's a young person that came to us who, I'm allowed to say the name, that we've got case studies, everything like that. His name's Brandon, and he came to us. It was basically, I did a talk on a radio, and I said in the radio's talk, I said, look, we can support anyone, come and bring them down. And at the time, we hadn't supported probably more than 20 people. I was very naive with what we could do. And I had a call, and there was loads of calls from parents saying, can you support us? Can you support us? And there was one call that I had late at night from a therapist, and he was a psychologist that was very against boxing. He was very much saying, boxing is for people that are angry, you're teaching them how to punch. boxing is for you're going to create more violent people, basically. And he said, you can't say you can help anyone. That's wrong of you to do. And I said, hold my hands up. I said, I really think that what we're doing can be so powerful. I said, there must be people that you haven't been able to support that could have benefited from us. And after a long conversation back and forth, it seemed like there was someone who they were working with called Brandon who wasn't able to be supported by them. And I said, would you be willing, completely free, try and bring him along to Friday's session and see what we can do? And hearing about Brandon and reading the film for him is very much, he was extremely anxious and what's classed as a schoolophobic, and he wouldn't attend school, wouldn't leave the house hardly. But after speaking to him, he was very interested in coming and trying boxing. He really liked it, watched it on telly. And that really struck me as, okay, this person wants to come along. There's something he wants to do and he's motivated to do. So he came into the session and we treated him like he should have been treated, called him champ, like it literally, he was the person that we really started to believe in. And from this anxious person that took part in the boxing session, it was crazy to see the impact that not only it had on him, but that he had on other people. He created some really good friendships in that group, and we called him Brandon Believe. That was his boxing name. And we got some shorts that said Believe on it. And long story short, within the first 3 months, he was back in education. He was actually seeing him. We kind of addressed some of the things that were happening. It was just all around. He was very conscious of how the world saw him. So we almost created a character that was liked by other people. So what we all showed him, what the rest of the group, not me, showed him was he was loved for who he was, being really, really authentic. And that was really, really key. So he not only managed to go back into school, he sat his GCSEs, and then he managed to volunteer for us and actually supporting us in the evenings. And he's doing incredible things now. So I'd say Brandon's one of the stories that really, really stood out for me. And he's done incredible things. And
and your second one?
Yeah, the other one, there's this young person called Cal who a lot of people wrote off completely. He started, because of trauma that he went through, he started smoking weed when he was 12 years old, and we didn't want him to do his 16, so he was 4 years smoking weed. He started boxing, and actually, I'll be honest with you, when I spoke to him, he had no desire to stop or try and come off weed. He's like, no, it's a part of my life. It's who I am. This is, and then it built up the identity around that. And actually, it wasn't until he saw how the benefits of boxing and how good he could be, and he realized that was holding him back. That's what gave him the leverage to stop. And I think if someone's going to make a real change, the first thing you need is leverage. And I think that comes from what I call the pain and pleasure principle. You need to associate more pain with staying the same than you do with making a change. So for him smoking weed wasn't causing any pain. Actually, when he found out how much it was stopping him with his boxing, that's when it became a pain for him to do it. So that's when he started to want to make a change. When you start to realize you want to make a change, that's when you've got from your leverage, that's your state. That's when you've got your strategy. So, okay, so this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do instead. This is what's going to work. The way to break through the strategy is your story. So it's state, strategy, story. The story is the things you tell yourself. He identified himself as a weed smoker. This is who I am. We had to almost create a new identity with him, actually, around him being a boxer, him being Cal, him being that person. And it took some time, but he did incredible. Went on to actually have boxing matches as well for us. Managed to get a full-time job as well from someone who was 16, who was about to sit GCSEs, but wasn't predicted to do anything at all and was expelled from almost every school. He really, really managed to focus because he saw purpose in what he was becoming, and he's still doing it now, and we're so proud to have him.
No, that's brilliant. And just touching on something you said earlier on, you talked about social media. Obviously, it's in the media a lot at the moment. How do you have a feeling for how much they're using social media when they come to you for the first time, and how? Do you have any sort of feel for how those habits change as they get a discipline like boxing?
I'd say the actual usage of social media isn't too much of the problem. It's what they're using it for, what they want to get out of that. So quite often for a lot of young people, they will become a person and actually look at what posts are getting them the most likes. Who do I need to become to get more likes? And what we find is that normally happens if that person isn't comfortable with who they really are. If they knew and they were confident that actually their core belief was I'm loved for exactly who I am, they wouldn't have a problem having to create someone else online. So most of the young people we're working with, the person they are online is not the person they actually are. And it's really, really hard because when you create that character that's liked by other people, you can really lose yourself. So what we found is that that's the way to get the need. Let's look at what the need is underneath the social media. Is it all around them being popular, being liked? If that's the case, and their really key need is connection, how can we create them like connections without that? So yeah, in the gym, no one uses phones or social media or anything like that. And they've got to really allow themselves to be exactly who they are to really find it. And then, do you know what, their usage, we have seen it change. Some of them actually create these, okay, cool, I'm a boxer now, this is who I am, this is who I live by. And that's absolutely cool. But the main thing is, if they want to use social media loads more, absolutely fine, as long as it's not to pursue a life that isn't them. As long as it's about them being authentic online, that's really, really key for us. So authenticity is really, really key.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so in terms of you personally, Joe, you know, you're hearing some pretty tough stories. You're seeing some people come to you that have, you know, that are really, really on their uppers and feel like they've got no hope. How does that, you know, that's tough to see sometimes. I know you're doing something about it, which is brilliant, but how do you cope with that personally and seeing these stories? How resilient have you become have you become more resilient by seeing these things?
Yeah, do you know, I think that when the older me, right, used to think, okay, I'm a 6'8" boxer, I've got to be tough and strong and everything like that, and used to hold everything in, and you'd be speaking to all of these young people and they kind of like be telling you these things. You think it's cool, I can hold it, I can, then you don't realize what impact that can have on yourself. And I'm very lucky that boxing was really an outlet for me in a way for me to do that. But it would kind of like fill up and fill up and fill up and fill up. And I would have nothing to like pour out. Do you know what I mean? No way of pouring out of my full bucket here. So I need to keep pouring things out. And I suppose probably in 2022-ish, I was kind of like really struggling with it all without even realizing what was wrong. I became very ill, burnt out. And I think it was kind of like vicarious trauma in a way. I was getting the trauma from them attached to me. And I had to build a real stable routine to be able to offload these things, talk about them, open them up more. And actually supporting the young people has helped support me and learn about myself. So really selfishly, more than anything, I've really kind of got to grips and actually become so much more vulnerable myself. The person I used to think that I had to be with this big tough hard boxer to actually take all this on, and that's how I can be able to change the world, isn't right. I've got to model the behavior that I'm actually showing. Actually, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. I need to be able to talk to people about exactly what's happening with me, some of the things that are going on. And actually, I found that sport was a great way of releasing and letting things out, but also actually having them conversations and normalizing talking about mental health was massive.
Yeah, totally. And I presume you work with girls and boys, right? Are you finding that you've got more girls coming to you? Is it more, you know, do they feel more comfortable in the gym? How does that kind of dynamic work?
More so than ever now. When we started, right, I think when you have an open session, which everyone come to, it's very, very rare that we had many females come in because it's like kind of like they would choose to. But when we started to create the referral pathways and how actually people refer in, that was when it was less about taking part in boxing and more about achieving the results and the benefits that boxing can have in your life. That's when we started to get more and more girls. I still think there's a huge stigma around boxing and a lot of sports in general where people see it as a more male-dominated sport. So there's still something to address there. But yeah, we worked with a group of girls to actually identify what was needed by them for them to feel comfortable with coming. And some of them said, you know what, we want some sessions away from the lads because I don't feel like I can open up in front of them, or I don't feel like I want them to watch me because they'll be taking the mick and things. That's what they thought. And that's why we started our female-only groups as well. And that's when we started a number of sessions that were specifically aimed at them. And everything they told us, we took on board and we're like, okay, you've already designed this. I think that's really, really key. Involving the people you're trying to support in the decision-making process.
Yeah, makes sense. So then what you know, Brightstar Boxing's grown so much, you're delivering so much support. how do you see it? How do you see it growing further? What do you really, that classic question, I guess, what 3 years, 5 years time, what do you look back on, and where do you want to be in 5 years with Brightstar Boxing?
Yeah, we're working on some really exciting projects now, and we're doing a lot of consultancy with a number of different countries on how they can use sport to tackle world issues. What I've realized is that there's so many amazing sports clubs out there that have all the right values and really, really want to help. But a lot of the time they need support embedding themselves into the sector, and then they actually being able to see as a real strong part of the community. They know the areas that they're in better than we ever will. So rather than us looking to deliver X, Y, Z all across the country, we need to be able to support more clubs to be able to better support their communities. So the role that we play that is building the infrastructure. We've done a recent project where we call it the Telford Sport for Change Alliance. And we want to train, so we've trained 9 clubs in Telford. We want to keep growing on that. And they're in the heart of communities that are seen as more disadvantaged. And we're running a project with them now where there's going to be over 100 young people from disadvantaged background supported by their clubs. We've trained the clubs up, we're supporting them build their pathways. And on the back of that, we've got some real strong evidence. We're currently growing that on how that changed the way that the community worked. And if this goes well, I'd love to be able to see that replicated nationally, internationally, where we can support the growth. And the mission is to change the way the world works for young people. That's not necessarily us doing every part of that. We need to work with some really key clubs to deliver that and make that work.
Yeah, so creating a lot of processes for them, right? And a kind of the pathway, the roadmap for them to be able to deliver it properly. So that'll be a really interesting evolution, won't it? From doing it directly yourselves to supporting others. That's it's going to be a really good journey, Joe. I look forward to watching it. And have you got you're now it's now not just you and your mate. We got 30 people working for Brightstar Boxing. Is that right?
Yeah, including volunteers as well. Yeah, just over 30.
Yeah. And you try and get people that you've supported to come in and do volunteering themselves and kind of paying it forward.
Yeah, definitely. That's really key. I think that one of our values, whenever we're recruiting people, it's all based on values. And our value, as I said before, is passion. The best way to get someone with passion is someone who really believes in what's happening. And the best way to get someone who really believes in what's happening is someone who's seen there, been there and done that themselves. That's how they can make real change and go the extra mile. Because sometimes when we work with young people, it can be a real struggle. It can be really hard. And actually, those with passion will have the resilience and actually have the desire to really support and go the extra mile for them. So yes, if we can create the next workforce, the next generation through people we're supporting, incredible.
Yeah, superb. Joe, thank you so much. I can't wait to watch the next bit of the journey with you and with Brightstar Boxing. And thanks so much for coming on and keep doing the fantastic work.
And same to you. Thank you for having me on. And I've got to say that I think that this is a really important podcast to be able to spread the message of exactly what we can do and championing the voice of young people as well as of sport. So thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Bye.